Hey there folks, Glenn with the almost world famous Cactus Atlas here in Capitol Reef, hanging out with my new friends. You can see there's Slim, there's my tent, and there's these guys. And they don't seem to mind me at all. Well, before we get started this morning, I need to get caffeinated. And then I'll tell you what's up while we get ready. So I'm in Capitol Reef, and today we're going to be doing an adventure that is very much in Capitol Reef for a lot of the time. Then we're going to come out on other roads and basically explore something in the park that they have a name for. Basically, I'm going to show you a visual of what this is. But basically, looping the fold is a term used to describe driving a really long route that comprises much of the southern part of the park. And we'll talk about the fold and what that is, because this whole drive is this educational type of thing. And where did I get this beautiful book, by the way, which actually talks about the route, and it basically has stops notated by mile markers that we're gonna keep track of ourselves. Very similar to other things we've done this year in other parks, where I'm gonna take you through and we'll stop and we'll learn. The tour is 125 miles long, and they say it takes about 4 hours, 4 to 6, and it depends on how much you stop and how much you hike. It can also be a full day if you want, if you do a lot of hiking. So I've studied the pamphlet pretty well for gleaming the cube, looping the fold, and basically it looks easy. A big section of it's paved, but there's 30 miles of that 125 that are not, that are a graded gravel road, and it's listed as washboardy. The National Park Service says if you're careful, a passenger car should be able to do it under normal circumstances, but they recommend high clearance and all-terrain tires. So that's what the book says, and we're here to discover for ourselves what that really means. I suspect it means anybody can do it. Just don't go when it rains or if there's a chance for rain or something like that, because as you'll see if you go to the visitor center and talk to a ranger, they will give you local conditions, by the way, but they'll show you a picture of what happens if you try to drive in the mud. And then you'll say, yeah, I'm not gonna do that. So my plan is to drink my coffee really quick, maybe nibble on something, and Slim is pretty much ready and waiting, so we just have to get in, mount some cameras, and our first stop is the visitor center, where we're gonna set our trip odometer to 0, and that's their recommendation. And then from there, we're heading out to loop the fold. Look at this scene here in the morning in this historic district here in Capitol Reef. Beautiful. And like I said, if you want to see this area, check out Camp View. I walked this whole area down a little bit further by the Fremont River down here, and we explore the grounds. And one of the justifications I give for wanting to camp here is really just the scene in which the campground is in. It's very unique and maybe one of the most beautiful ones I've ever stayed at. For real. And it comes with deer, baby deer, male deer, female deer, deer and deer and deer. Oh dear. Okay. I'm gonna talk about my game plan a little bit. Well, actually, might as well talk about it now. So this has like 38 stops in it. And there, if you look on a given page, you can kind of see what it looks like. See that? So the stops seem to be one of several different things. It might be a historic stop. The first 2 stops have to do with history. One with Mormon pioneer history, and the other one with the native history, the Fremont culture. So right off the bat, we're doing my favorite things are seeking out historic stuff. The other type would be geology stops, where you stop and this explains the geology of the surrounding area you're gonna look at. That sounds awesome. The third type are just trailheads. And the hikes sound amazing. A few slot canyons. Some that might require wading in deep pools of water and stuff, which I'm not coming here today to do that. So I may skip over for time's sake a lot of these trailheads, not because I don't want to go do them, but there's a couple that sound interesting, like the Grand Wash. I think there's some popular trails where that one's a narrows with cliffs hundreds of feet high, it says. So if you think I'm skipping over something and you're like, oh, you shouldn't have, I apologize. We have 125 miles here to do today, so I have to be a little judicious about what we do. So most likely I'm thinking gonna hit all of the geology and historic stops of interest and relay what this is saying, and probably gonna maybe stop, and if I see some interesting hikes, I might get out and look at a sign and see, oh, it's only a mile long, let's do it. But a lot of them seem to be a little bit longer than that. Anyway, so we're starting off turning right onto 24, and we have to go 0.8 miles now. We're at 0.00, 0.1, and that's going to be our first stop. So we will test the accuracy of the triptych mileage. Now it does make sense. They say if you go off trail and you take a spur or something, yeah, that's going to change it. But I plan on sticking to the route, just so you guys can see what it's like in case you want to do it too if you come to visit here. So wow, look at the scene though. Just look at how beautiful and towering these red cliffs are. It's amazing. All right, we're already halfway to our first stop and halfway to our first mile of our 125-mile adventure off the road. I'm gonna call out every mile, like that's 125 miles, 124 miles, 123 bottles of beer on the wall, 123 bottles of beer, and we'll sing it the whole time. Sound awesome? No. All right, so I'm nearing something here. So I'm looking for a historic cabin, basically. There it is, historic, no? Yeah, the Fruita School, that's it. Looks like somebody else is here this morning to check it out too. Stop number 1 is the historic Fruita Schoolhouse, which was built in 1896. So a real 1800s piece of wood. According to the sign here, this was Fruita's only public structure. Very small. My pamphlet says that, or the book I bought says that they source the wood from the mountains west of here. I wonder if them be the mountains that we're gonna drive through later that I drove through yesterday. Show some footage. You could see lots of pine trees, lots of wood up in surrounding mountains. You wouldn't think it around here, and even the natives would do that, like in Chaco Canyon. And I'm sure cultures around here, they didn't have wood in the direct vicinity of all of what they did. It's thought that they transported a lot of it from nearby mountains. So everybody was doing it back then. And this structure, this really small schoolhouse, actually ran until 1941, when there wasn't enough people, I guess, to warrant having it anymore. So for 1896, did they have saws back then? I don't think they did. I see notches here, so I'm thinking this may have been one of those hand-cut jobs. I don't know when they would have started using saws to cut the wood, but anyway, look in here. This is a nice little view with the sunlight coming in there. Just like I've seen in other schoolhouses, you've got the stove in the middle. So kind of in the middle of a class, the teacher might say, "Little Susie, I need to put some more wood in that stove, please." And little Susie would get up, grab a log, and throw it in the fire. Anyway, we got our first stop done, and that was a cool one. The historic stuff is my favorite, so and this is a really cool specimen for the Cactus Atlas. So the Fruita Schoolhouse, 1896. All right, so now we're looking for mile 1.1, and that would be our Fremont Culture Petroglyph panel. And I'll wait till we get out until I talk about that, but we're looking for petroglyphs. My guess is that this would be one set of panels somewhere up here, and I'm gonna tell you what little there is that the book says, and I'll tell you, I probably know more than the book for once. So can you guys see where, like, here's a rendition of what these people were like, maybe, the Fremont culture. So where are these things? I'm not a fan of petroglyph panels like this that you can't really see them up close, and maybe there's not enough good lighting here, but do you guys see any petroglyphs? The heck? I see them. I was looking here in the foreground. They're actually up there, and they look like they have the same look as a lot of those things we've seen, like at Buckhorn Wash pictograph panel. Those like trapezoidal kind of body shapes and kind of eerie. You see that set right up there? That's an important thing because it is kind of unique to that culture, the Fremont culture, that style. And therein lies one of the ways that archaeologists divide some of these ancient cultures into different cultures, different groups, if you were. So the people that did that were contemporaries of the Anasazi, or the ancestral Puebloans, i.e. the people that built Chaco Canyon, which we're not terribly far from that region, I guess, the Four Corners region. However, I mean, we're a few hours from there. But the dividing line between those cultures is around the Colorado River, which we're north of that. And the book really basically is saying that style of what you're seeing there is very unique to what they call the Fremont culture. And it's one of the things they use to kind of differentiate between those two cultures. But anyway, while people were building Chaco Canyon and all that, I wouldn't be surprised if these people knew of that and if they were trading with these people. It wasn't like they were always necessarily at war with each other. But yeah, this region with the red sandstone, that's the Fremont. Notice they have like some kind of thing here. Does it work? No, it doesn't.
Michael Wasney Kuban. My name is Rick Pickavit. My southern Paiute ancestors were roaming and hunting the canyon south of here when white settlers arrived in the 1880s. Long before the Mormon pioneer or any tribal memory.
All right, stop number 2 done. Our next stop is at 1.9 miles, so not quite a mile. And we're gonna learn a little bit about how Capitol Reef got half of its name. And we'll learn about the second half. So the Capitol and Capitol Reef is what we're gonna talk about. I didn't know, and this is kind of cool. It's a geology stop though, I'm just warning you, it's not history. Although I guess if they name the place after something, that could be historical, I guess. Okay, so we're at 1.8. I think I actually see it right here. And 1.9 should be right here. I can tell you right now, this is not going to be the most ideal lighting for viewing this thing, but you can still see it. So this sign here is what we're interested in, the Capitol Dome, which I'm going to maybe go out to the road a little bit, but you can see it right back here, that white round dome. And that is where the Capitol in Capitol Reef comes from. And actually there's a really neat trail that follows the edge of that. But that's not for us today. The book says to kind of come down and look down the Fremont River, which flows through our campground too, by the way, to get a good look at the dome. And I would agree, this might be the best vantage point right here. So if you haven't figured it out yet, the white sandstone dome ahead of us here, to a lot of people it resembles the US Capitol building. And that's where Capitol Reef gets its name. The first half of it, Capitol, from that formation right there. I did not know that until I got the Looping the Fold book. And I'm passing the learnings on to you. How many of you knew that? I know plenty of you did, but some of you didn't either. Don't even act like it. So then what about the reef in Capitol Reef? Well, just like the book says, you see that terminology in southern Utah a lot, like in the San Rafael Swell, behind the reef drive. And you know, the main reason for that is that a lot of these formations are thought of as a reef in that it's kind of blocking people's progress or way to get past it. So they call a lot of these formations reefs because they literally block the way. I think the story of Hole in a Rock might be an example of where old, like, Mormon settlers were trying to blast through something like that. But basically, reef means a geological feature that makes it impassable to get over. So we're gonna skip over a couple things now. We got a trailhead, and we got something called the Navajo, forget what formation. It's a geology formation, but there's nowhere to really pull over, it says. You have to pull over on the side of the road. So I'm gonna make a beeline to the 6 mile mark so we can get some. We got 4 miles to go. The 6 mile mark, where there's another historic structure, an old cabin. That looks awesome, kind of reminiscent of that schoolhouse. And we'll talk about the history of that also. So that pointy thing up there, I think, is the Navajo Dome. Or there's gonna, if that's not it, it's something really close to here, but all consist of Navajo sandstone is what it says. Not really too much, but there's a geologic feature called the Navajo Dome. I think it was that pointy thing way up at the top over there. And if not, if we see another pointy thing, then I'll point it out to you. A lot of our journey is to be enjoyed from the vehicle, of course, as we're doing a very scenic drive, or what's supposed to be a very scenic drive throughout this park. So another giant sandstone formation, and we have about 3 more miles to go, and we should be finding that cabin. This is the Behunin cabin, which is a one-room cabin built in 1882 by Elijah Cutler Behunin. I don't know how you pronounce that. And he had a family of 11, as you can see here. 11 of their 13 children, I should say, in 1896, posing here after they moved to Fruita. So basically what this is saying is they came out, the guy built this cabin, probably some other buildings too, but the Fremont River, which is over there, kept flooding and damaged their irrigation system and stuff. So it's not a good, safe place to be. And then there was a settlement downriver from here that got completely wiped out by a flash flood. So basically, people came out here, built it, and then they realized, uh-oh, Mother Nature's pretty cruel, and that's what these people had. So an 1800s, 1882 structure. You can see instead of building it with all wood, they chose to use locally sourced sandstone, it looked like to me, rock. Must have been dark in there, not many windows, and everything's boarded up now. I don't know, you think he was living in here with his 11 kids? 11 of his 13 that were out here, it said. It seems a little crowded to me. Makes me wonder if they had separate quarters for the kids, but back then though, you never know. I've seen some cabins that are small where big families lived in them, so that'd be crowded. I tried to peek in there, it's really hard. I could barely see anything, but it looks like it's just empty with like a plastered looking kind of wall, but I couldn't tell for sure. Anyway, another piece of history here in Capitol Reef right off the drive. Our next stop is like 3 miles. It should be at 9.1 miles. Actually 9.2 for me. I'll have to manually kind of offset and adjust every once in a while, which is fine. I can do a little bit of math. Basically, we're just looking for a junction, which is, we're gonna be, I think there's an entrance to the park on this side, but we're gonna make a right onto something called the Notom, Notom, Bullfrog Road, which is a big part of this whole, I guess, we're going to head south through the park at that point. And I think the first 10 miles are paved, then it turns into gravel. I would say nothing scary. If it's meant for passenger vehicles, then my truck should not have a problem. So at 9.2 miles in, I think we're gonna make a turn, and I think just to kind of conserve on batteries and SD card space, and to make this not too tedious for you, I'm gonna shut up and make a beeline to the junction. So I'm at the junction here at the No-Tom Bullfrog Road. You can see it straight ahead of me. So we had to make a right turn off of 24 onto that. And this is basically the part that connects you with the Burr Trail, which we're gonna be doing part of that. There's a restroom here and a Capitol Reef National Park sign. This is one of the entrances. A lot of people are stopping here to take a picture, including the people that were just here. I swear to you, it was night at the Roxbury. This car pulls up and I just hear tss, 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 tss. I'm like, you do you, man, you do you. Anyway, so this is our junction, and I'm at 9.3 miles because I turned off to go to the restroom, and that added another 0.1 miles. So now I'm off. I am now 2.2 miles off of the triptych, offset. Our next stop is supposed to be at 14.0 miles in. For us, it should be 14.2. And that's going to be a history stop. Location of an old settlement. It's probably not there anymore, or any evidence of it. But I'm suspecting now we're going to get into the thick, deep part of this, and hopefully it's going to become a wonderland of rocks. Although that's a different park, isn't it? Okay, our next stop actually ended up being, I was predicting 14.2 miles. My triptych says 14.1, the book says 14. But this is the former site of a town called No-Tom. I don't know, that's an interesting name. I think what comes to my mind is something that if you're a pilot, like N-O-T-A-M, notice to airmen. But I know that's not, that's just a weird association. Anyway, this is kind of interesting. It shows you like people that were in this town, and they were war veterans in World War II. So people were living out here as late as World War II, and it looks like a few of them may have died in service to their country during the war. And then there's the No Tom song, Are You From No Tom? Are you from No Tom? I said from No Tom, where the fields of hard work. All right, that's not how it goes. I can read music, but it's treble clef. It's been a long time. I was a trombone player, so bass clef is what I learned, but I know treble clef too from playing guitar. So, but it's been so long since I've done it, I can't sight read that well anymore. Otherwise, I'd hum. I'm a little confused because there is something I want to see here, and there's supposed to be a hill where there's a graveyard or a grave on it. And it's actually a son of that Elijah Buchanan, the one of the cabin we talked about in one of the last stops. One of his sons died by falling off a horse, and he's buried somewhere right here. It says there's a hill with a fence on it, and you can kind of see the grave from behind the fence, but I don't see how one would, where it would be. I think I see it actually, right there. I actually do see like this little fenced in area. The booklet says, it makes it sound like you can walk and just don't go over the fence, but I think maybe they're talking about this fence here, because I don't know, probably private land. I don't know how you'd get up there, but I bet you that there is where the son is buried, the one that fell off the horse. And the book basically is saying just kind of consider that it was a much harder time to live in. Although falling off a horse, people can still do that today. So, but feel bad though. All right, so that's the former site of this town. I don't even see any evidence of anything having been here. I don't know what that is. That's just junk. I guess somebody's doing work out here. It's probably private property. I see a residence way up there now. Anyway, No Tom. Looks like we're gonna skip over the next official stop, which is another trailhead into a slot canyon that I am not planning on doing. And I think our next stop is actually a geology stop where we should be able to see some hoodoos. And that's going to be 17.6 miles in, so a little more than 3 miles from this current location. So let's start. So, as the booklet says, we're looking at hoodoos. You know about hoodoos if you watch our channel, like these kind of tower-like structures. Bryce Canyon's a great example of hoodoos. Hoodoo you voodoo, if you know what I'm saying. Anyway, so basically this is what's known as Entrada sandstone, and you're gonna see it at lots of the parks around Utah, like Arches it mentions. That's not the only place where you're gonna see this. And you can see various strata, like various layers in there of varying hardness. And it's those varying levels of hardness, I think, that make some of the pieces a little bit more erosion resistant, so they can form these weird structures. It almost looks like some kind of pastry or cake with like various layers in there, maybe of like a wafer, chocolate wafer type of thing. That's what I always think. But these things were formed near an inland sea, it says, millions of years ago, I believe. And a lot of this stuff is originated as windblown sand that just kind of piled up, and then, you know, I assume it gets covered up over time, varying, you know, layers of sediment and stuff, and then it gets squished down and compacted and hard and turns into sandstone or mudstone. And then gets exposed again, only to be eroded away slowly to nothing. And somewhere in between, you might end up with something like this. I'm gonna call it Viennetta. Remember those desserts of Viennetta, those ice cream things? Didn't they have like little layers like that in them? Delicious. Getting hungry now. I want something sweet. But anyway, yeah, it is cool to think. I mean, I like the human history, but the geologic history is cool too. And just, I don't know, what if we could do the H.G. Wells time machine thing and just stay right here, assuming we don't get buried by other sediment, and just watch it all, like in fast forward over the millions of years, just form, like the wind-blown sand forming, it getting covered up, exposed again, weathering, watching each layer form. Fascinating. All right, I'm reviewing our little map here, and we have a few stops, I think, to skip because we got a bunch of trailheads coming up. I want to point them out there. I passed a couple things. The Grand Wash, I think it was, down by the main area. There's a lot of cars parked there, but apparently that's a pretty popular hike in Capitol Reef. I think it's you go into this wash and then end up having like cliffs on, you know, hundreds of feet high above you, kind of a narrows, I think. There's another Slot Canyon burrow wash that we passed right back there, and out here it's just out in the open. It's like a dirt wash, so you don't even see any evidence of a Slot Canyon, but apparently there's one somewhere here. Might as well just start driving, actually. And then more hikes. So yes, I'm reminding everybody, I know we're skipping them, but what we're essentially looking at now is I'm at 17.7 miles in. Just so you know, the geology stop is 17.6 miles on the tour. So I'm like 0.1 miles off still. And I'm going to go to junction. There's another junction at mile 22.9. And we want to go continue straight ahead at Sandy Ranch Junction. So, okay, if you turn left, then you need high clearance, but we're going to stay straight or to the right. So basically, we're going to a junction. I'll kind of point it out to you. And then at mile 24, there's another geology stop where I think we're going to be able to talk about the Water Pocket Fold, and we're going to view the Henry Mountain somewhere. Several geology stops coming up, and looking at the pictures, I think it's going to be some very pretty, unique areas. Kind of like this thing here. We're kind of coming up on, there's a little, there it is right there. So exactly, so I'm at 22.9 miles exactly. So somehow or another I'm back in sync with the trip. That's weird. Anyway, there you go. That was the junction. I don't know, it's almost not even worth them putting that in there, to be honest. I guess they want to be careful so that you don't make a wrong turn, but now we're going to site 24, so another mile, we have another geology stop, and it's going to give us a view of some of the major landscape around here, and we can kind of talk about it. So I'm 24.1 miles in. I was looking for something at 24 miles because we're seem to be in sync with a triptych, but I don't think there's an official pullout for this, even though the booklet doesn't say anything to you. But what they're pointing out are some of the geological features here as we drive by something called Sandy Ranch, where they're growing fields of alfalfa. I'm guessing that's what that is. I think alfalfa is what they grow to feed cattle, right? That's the main purpose of alfalfa. I don't know. But beyond that, in the background are the Henry Mountains, and there's some really interesting facts about the Henry Mountains that I think are worthy of note that the book mentions. I read about this feature, this geologic feature you're actually looking at, this long stretch of the sandstone rising from the earth going all the way down that way. That's the Water Pocket Fold, is what it's called. And this is not in the book. I'm kind of remembering reading about it in something else last night, but I believe it is the largest monocline geologic feature. I think it's 90 miles long in the world, I think it was. And what is a monocline? Well, the basic description I got is it's a wrinkle in the earth, like this uplifted region that's now being eroded away, and part of why we have this beautiful thing called Capitol Reef. It almost reminds me of the San Rafael Swell, and that's something I don't know geologically. That's not far from here, and I think we're going to be able to see it from a certain point. The swell kind of looks like some of the stuff I'm seeing, like especially down that way. Is the swell a monocline also? I don't know. When I was in 10th grade in high school, I was in an honors or science class. Mr. McLeod was the name of the teacher. I would say maybe one of the best teachers I've ever had. His wife was my French teacher. Those two were maybe some of the best teachers. Mr. McLeod, I remember our classroom was down where the shop, like in my high school, down in the back of the thing where the shop class was, kind of the industrial section. But this guy had, we had diamond saws in there. We would go on excursions to wild caves. Like, the reason why I think he was a good teacher is it wasn't just book learning, it was book learning mixed with really practical stuff, like sitting there taking rocks to the diamond saw and doing cool stuff, or visiting wild caves. And monocline is something, I remember that term, but I don't remember all the facts. But that was probably one of my favorite classes of all time. Let's turn our attention back to those Henry Mountains in the background. A couple interesting facts. One, that those mountains were the last officially named mountains in the contiguous United States, named by John Wesley Powell, an explorer in 1869, I believe. He named it after a gentleman that worked for the Smithsonian, a Mr. Henry. Forget all of the names, but that's good enough for you to know. The interesting fact I wanted to point out is, the last named mountain range in the 48 contiguous United States. I have to assume somewhere in Alaska there's something that was more recently named. The book also, or the pamphlet, mentions that those are very infrequently visited mountains because you need to have a vehicle that can get you up in there. So it's very much wild in there. And apparently there are still bison that live in there that are very special genetically. I guess they're very resistant to disease, or they haven't been introduced to disease that's very dangerous to bison. And I know that it says they transplanted some bison from Yellowstone back in there somewhere. So apparently there's some OG bison herds living back in that area. And they don't have some of the same disease issues that other bison have. Those are the main points that I'm kind of recalling from the pamphlet. So all sorts of interesting facts. And then, of course, alfalfa. And then, needless to say, just absolute wondrous beauty out here, and geology for all to enjoy. I bet you if I had Mr. McLeod's class and I was on the East Coast back then, where you study all this stuff, but you never get to see anything cool. Lots of limestone and caves and stuff, but you don't have this kind of thing out there. So maybe that's why I never fully embraced becoming an earth scientist or a geologist, is, you need this to go along with it. So I hope there's more Mr. McLeods out there teaching their students, but actually bringing them out into the field to places like this to see it and to explain it and to interpret it, because it makes a heck of a lot more sense when you see it to scale than trying to read about it in a book. It's really interesting to see the Water Pocket Fold now, in scale in front of me, and kind of understand it. But it very much is like the here's the dirt road. like the San Rafael Swell, especially this area back this way. So it's making me wonder that, like, and then you have reefs and all the same features over by the swell. So I'm gonna guess that's a monocline. So the National Park Service says this road should be doable for passenger cars most of the time. And what that really means is if it hasn't rained recently, because this stuff turns into a really slippery, thick mess of mud. And imagine trying to drive on that, and imagine the mud sticking to your tires. So now your tires are basically just big mud wheels that don't grip anything, and then you get stuck. And then you probably just have to wait it out until it dries out, you know, so you can get out. So I would say the best advice you're gonna get from me, as well as the rangers, are gonna tell you the same thing, is go visit them before you do these things and ask the locals about the weather reports, or have good software so you can get accurate weather reports yourself. But also note, you're not gonna have any cell phone signal, just like they said. So once you're out here, you're flying blind. The heads up, the book doesn't, some of them they say there's no official stop, like a pull off, and some don't, and I'm telling you, a lot of them don't. So just pay mind, look at the pictures, because if you look at the picture in the book, it matches up exactly with that. That's the Summerstone Formation, or an exposed section thereof, in the Somerville Formation. And what we're looking at are layers, basically, those exposed layers. And now, based on what I was saying back there, let's kind of visualize what the book says happened here, and then we'll get a better understanding of the geology and time involved, maybe. You're basically seeing layers of sediments that are now combination of sandstone, siltstone, mudstone, and gypsum. And the way this formed is this was part of like the western edge of an inland sea at some point. So imagine, I guess, water, this is underwater, and over time, sediments would settle. Then I guess the way the currents worked in that area was conducive to this. So you're basically just seeing layer after layer of sediment that just kind of piled up on the western edge of an inland sea, and it's now been exposed to the air and elements, and you're seeing a cross section of all those layers of time, where just over time, I guess, little particles would flow down to the floor of the inland sea, layer upon layer. And I'm taking it the wider layers are gypsum, the lighter ones, and I was talking about how those could form, I guess, when there's periods of faster evaporation, is what it was saying. You'll have the gypsum layers, and I think gypsum's typically the lighter colored stuff, but that's about all the detail you get in that book. But it's really cool to see that. So we got about 4 miles to go until our next stop, another geology stop at 32.3 miles in. And see, that's one that says in here, hey, there's no place to pull off. So it's like, just be careful, pull off the road, and don't park on top of vegetation if you can. Well, I mean, this is kind of the same thing, isn't it? There's no real official pull off. So that's what was confusing me, is I don't think many of them do have like an official spot where you're gonna pull off and find an interpretive sign. So when it says pull over, you know, I would say mind it, or else you're gonna miss something. And just pay attention to that mileage. It's been pretty accurate, actually. I was exactly at 28.1 miles where I stopped there, and I was dead in front. Let me get some speed here to get these washboards going out of the way. So I was right in front of it. So that, I feel like I'm in sync almost with this thing. You could actually see, though, if you look at the landscape, much more of that, what I assume is the same formation, the Somerville Formation. And really, between us and our next geology stop, the only other point of interest is a primitive campground known as Cedar Mesa Campground. And there's like a spur you would go. I don't know what this dude's doing here. Looks like we're entering Capitol Reef National Park again. So we were not in Capitol Reef. I assume we were on BLM when we left that eastern entrance. Up until now, we were not in the national park. So had I had my drone, I think we could have flown up to see that little boy's grave. Or I shouldn't say little boy, whoever, the son of Elijah's grave. Maybe he was a young man when he passed, I don't know. So this one's a little confusing to me. It basically says that, I think what we're looking at is the thing in the background, not the ridge of stone here right in front of me. But it says to the left of you as you're driving, parallel with the road, is 95 million year old Dakota sandstone that was part of like in an ocean and in a shallow area. And apparently there's a bunch of oyster fossils that are very fragile among this stuff. So my question is, it doesn't clarify because there's also this ridge of stone like right here in front of me. So I don't know if it's that we're talking about or the thing in the background. I imagine it's the thing in the background. But then it says, you know, if you walk around here, you can see other people come out here. It says to be very careful and not to, you know, I guess in reference to the fossils. So that's why I'm wondering, is it this or is it the thing behind it? I think if anybody at the Park Service can, that might be a thing to maybe clarify in the book. I think it's this though that they're talking about. And maybe I see some right now. Oh my gosh, look at that. So I'm gonna say it is this, not that thing in the background. Those would be oyster fossils. I'm pretty sure, right? You see those? That's what it looks like to me. That's wild. I could see how they'd be very fragile. You could probably just grab and pull one off. I shouldn't give anybody any bad ideas. Do not do that. Do not take it. Leave it alone so people like me can enjoy it. Yeah, look. You can actually see fragments. I don't know, that's probably a violation of leave no trace right there. But I wanted to show you for educational purposes. Yeah, you could see like an oyster shell look to that. I'll put it back exactly. Well, there, I fit it like a puzzle back in there. All in this thing, everywhere. You see all that? 95 million years ago, these were living creatures, living organisms that were underwater here. 95 million. That is wild. All right, so that answers the question. It's this that I think the thing is talking about, and you'd have to walk up to see it. But had I not walked up, I was kind of thinking, because the thing in the background is spectacular. And the book hasn't talked about it yet. I don't know if it's going to. Yeah, 95 million year old stone and oyster fossils. I wonder if the oysters back then tasted the same that they do today. Any scientists out there, biologists, want to take a stab at that one?
Well, we hate to leave you hanging right here, but good things come to those who wait, so they say. And there's just no dang way to condense something this epic into a 10-minute video without sacrificing on just how epic this experience is. So tune in next week for the second half of our Loop the Fold adventure. See you then, buckaroos.